Hello again, everyone. I'm Peter Finney of the Clarion Herald, and we're here for another Clarion Herald video notebook. And with me again are our associate editor, Christine Bordelon, and Beth Donzi, who's our staff writer and Kids Clarion editor. We use these little 10 minutes, 12 minutes to update you on what's going on in the Archdiocese. And just as a reminder, every page of every issue of the Clarion Herald is available at clarionherald.org. The e-edition is available. So you go there, there's a very, very prominent box that you can click and you can download and look at every page of every issue. So we're looking ahead to the May 16th issue, which is next week, of course. But I was able to speak to the Archbishop earlier today, and he just wanted to kind of express his gratitude, his thanks for the teachers, the parents, and the students for all of the challenges they have faced. And in the remote learning situation, he says he knows how difficult it has been, especially for parents who, maybe working outside the home, but now all of a sudden in their lap as they become teachers. And to do the homeschooling, he knows how difficult that is. He says it's a positive and negative about homeschooling. Obviously, you get to spend more time with your kids. The negative is you get to spend more time with your kids, and in some cases, and there can be family tensions. And he realizes that, and he said, really, what his recommendation is to point to the Holy Family, to look at Jesus, Mary and Joseph, and how they handle their lives, and really to draw inspiration, from them. So he knows there's togetherness and there's also possible tension in this kind of situation. One last thing he mentioned was that in terms of graduations, activities which have been postponed, every school is kind of doing their own thing. And we really don't know at this moment, what schools are doing, say, a complete graduation ceremony. It might be later in the summer. It could be canceled altogether. It really depends. Everybody is in kind of a waiting mode. And he said that also applies to confirmation and also to somewhat to First Communion. Confirmation was supposed to be going on all these last 2 months. The Archbishop is thinking once the restrictions on mass attendance are lifted, they're going to be holding some regional confirmations where a lot of kids will come together. And it's usually the juniors in high school that are confirmed. And as far as First Communion, he said some pastors are actually doing First Communion with the second graders, taking 1 or 2 families at a daily mass, and then the child is receiving his or her First Communion. So I think that's kind of a very creative way of doing things. So a lot of great little stories. I think we'll know more on Monday. The governor, Governor Edwards, is supposed to make an announcement on what is the next step. I think people are hopeful that it will be, he'll announce 25% in terms of church attendance capacity. And it looks like maybe we're going in that direction. We don't know for sure, but certainly that would certainly bring a lot more people back into church. And I know, Chris, in terms of the coronavirus, this week, you have a very interesting story about a family, really it's twins, who attend Brother Martin. And there's an interesting twist on what they're doing really to, potentially save lives.
Yeah, the Centillas family in Metairie, 5 out of their 6 members wound up contracting the coronavirus. The mom was the sickest of all of them, but the twins, the 2 seniors at Brother Martin, Kevin and Joseph, also got the virus, a milder case than the mom. The mom had to be hospitalized. But one of the twins, Kevin, at birth, was born like 2 hours after his twin. And his blood was thick, and they had to pump plasma into him. And so when they got the virus, the same pediatrician group who had delivered them and treated them when they were born remembered that he had gotten plasma. So when they did his testing to see if he had antibodies, they found out he did. And then the mom told them the story about Kevin being born with this special, the thick blood and getting plasma. And so they were like, hey, guys, would you want to donate plasma? And both of them were like, oh, there's no doubt. Yes, of course. And so both of them donate plasma. So it's kind of all come full circle. One of them got the plasma. Now they're donating their plasma to help others in this pandemic.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And Beth, I know you've been working on a story at Loyola University. There's a professor doing something very interesting with kind of like urban farms and produce to get to people who really need it.
Yeah, for the last 3 years, Marianne Cuffone, who is the director of Loyola's Center for Environmental Law, has this nonprofit group called Recirculating Farms Coalition, and they've been packing these large bags of produce from local farmers, tons of fresh fruits and vegetables, and then dropping those off to various pickup locations to sell to low-income people for $15. I mean, you get a huge bag for $15. And so, but now that people are afraid to go to groceries, or the supplies of that fresh produce is spotty these days, they are now delivering these bags of produce door to door, which is a really nice way to keep people fed and healthy for a low price. If you're eligible for SNAP, you can use that money to purchase the bags also. And I think Mary Ann shines a real light on the importance of growing your own food. I mean, we've all had thoughts about that. I wish I could go in the backyard and pick some food now that it's tough to go to the grocery store. Her nonprofit supports urban produce gardens, and they currently have 4 locations, 3 of which are in Central City, which has no full service grocery store. So the residents in those neighborhoods are really happy to learn more about different ways to grow your own food. And it's funny, Cafone has a great childhood story as well. She grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, right across from New York City. And she cannot remember a time when the family didn't grow their own food, even if it meant having pots of herbs and tomatoes and green beans on fire escapes. You know, everybody sort of grew their own stuff, especially the immigrant families. So, and then she also recalls what a waste it was. She called it a waste when they moved to the suburbs, and they had this huge lawn, and she said, what a shame that we're not growing anything on the lawn. So she was just so into growing her own food from the get-go. So I think there's a lot to learn from people who have done that from childhood. They have a lot to teach us, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
I think we'll see a spike in the number of victory gardens in the city after this thing is over.
That's good. Well, you know, that's taking care of our physical health. And I know Christine's doing a story, really kind of our mental health and what's going on with all our families. And there's some good news from the Catholic Counseling Service. Chris?
Yeah, the Archdiocese started this Catholic counseling, and they just received a donation from an anonymous donor, and they're able to increase the number of clients who can't afford or can barely afford their services. A lot of they can accept pro bono work. So that's the big news there. We were updating the story originally. They're still doing a lot of telehealth, and the main concern is financial. You know, that people lost their jobs, they're furloughed, and that's what they've been hearing a lot of, and what's going to happen in the near future after all this is over.
And I know Catholic Charities is also working with a reentry program and also the people who are coming out of prisons, and it's a very, and the detainees also, the immigrants who have not really been charged with anything, but they've been kind of detained in these prisons around the state. So what's new there, Chris?
Well, Kevin Fitzpatrick with Catholic Charities Justice and Peace office, they hosted a Zoom conference yesterday with a lot of people involved with prison reentry, as well as the detainees you're talking about, the immigration detainees at the centers. And, you know, it's a very difficult thing because normally you hear about the conditions in prisons as well as the detention centers. You know, they don't have adequate health care. They're not very clean. And so when you've got all these people packed in together, and a pandemic like this occurs, it makes the situation even a lot worse because viruses like this spread like wildfire. And they can't get, none of the agencies, they're nonprofits, as well as like the Department of Corrections was on the call yesterday. They don't have exact totals because they don't really keep track of inmates or detainees who contract the virus. So they're worried about that and trying to just make sure that, you know, the situation is not worse, you know, than it could be. So
Gotcha.
And they just discussed a lot of that.
Yeah. And, you know, I know it's also in Catholic schools, Catholic parishes, we have these kind of quiet heroes who have worked their whole life in Catholic education. And there's one lady, a religious, who at St. Dominic, who's kind of celebrating a little milestone coming up.
Yeah, Sister Mary Jo Lazzari, and she's Italian, and she's from Southern Illinois originally. She's a school sister of Notre Dame, and it was so funny talking to her because she actually lived with a grammar school nun, Sister Jean, who used to be at St. Philip, where I went to grammar school. And, you know, they have all these tales to tell about, you know, their living together in a house in Metairie. And so it was funny just to hear that. And she was so glad to hear that, you know, one of her sisters taught me, and, you know, I'm one of theirs. You know, it's like you hear that from all the Catholic school, you know, the religious, you know, they taught you and you've gone on to do something else, and they're so proud of you. But anyway, she's a character, and she has been at St. Dominic, I think, since 1970 now. I'm not going to remember. No, the 1990. She came to Louisiana in 1970. And she's been the religious educator there for teachers and students for many, many years. And they were going to give her a really good farewell. They were going to name the fair after her, and they invited all the alums to come back. And well, with this COVID stuff, the fair was in April. That didn't happen. And so it's just kind of a quiet goodbye to her. But a lot of people just told us she was like the core of the school. She was the heart of the school. And they said they didn't learn in 12 years of Catholic school what they learned just by her example. The teachers were telling me of her being there and praying with them every day in the morning with students and teachers.
Oh, that's great.
I can attest to Sister Mary Jo. She was my go-to source at St. Dominic for all the wonderful programming that they did that in the religion department. I mean, she was a perfectionist, but a very gentle perfectionist. I have never been so moved by living Stations of the Cross than I was when I viewed her seventh graders a few years back. She's an amazing woman. I can't wait to read your story.
Oh, thanks.
That's good. Well, you know, we've got, I know that the graduation section of the Clarion Herald is coming up, and we know we got together and we thought the seniors have been so disappointed over these last 2 months. What can we do for them to kind of make their graduation special? And in the graduation section in early June, we're going to have reports on every school, the graduation list, pictures of their Val and Sal, and also a little reflection from each student. So that's coming up in early June. And if you're a parent or a grandparent and you really want to kind of pat your child on the back, there's even a chance to take out a little congratulatory ad. So if you're thinking of that, you want to say, hey, they've been through a lot, I'm going to do this. You can congratulate them as well. And information for that is online at clarionherald.org. So don't forget, every page of every issue is at clarionherald.org. And if you click on it, you won't miss a thing. We've also got a great Facebook presence. Just today, we put up a bunch of photos on May crownings around the Archdiocese, and some beautiful pictures of children carrying on that tradition. So we hope you enjoy it. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week on the Clarion Herald Video Notebook.
And happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.